What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined by two members of this podcast who have worlds better Wi-Fi than I do, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Um, well, I'm doing good. We had to delay recording this because Chris I don't know what he's
I
doing.
live under a fucking rock, that's why, bro.
I see that, but other than that, I'm excited. Super Bowl weekend is here. I'm excited to eat really bad because I ate really good for the past month and a half, so I'm excited to kind of let loose. Just a big shout out to LeBron for being the all-time leading scorer, having the greatest achievement in basketball history. Big shout out to the GOAT. So yeah, I'm doing really good. It's been a good week.
When Patrick Starr has better connection to be able to watch TV under a rock under the sea, I think we got a little bit of a problem here. But aside from that, I'm doing good. It was a big week already this week. We have more big things coming with the biggest game of the football season coming up. But before that, we have a bunch of news to discuss, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so just a disclaimer, if this episode goes on and the audience doesn't hear me anymore, it's because I just gave up. And then Jurg and Damien took the reins. Take of that what you will. I trust y'all two to steer the ship if I die out here, Wi-Fi wise. But yeah, like Jurg said, massive week this week. We are coming off the heels of NBA trade deadline, an eventful NBA trade deadline, and of course we also have the Super Bowl this Sunday. We're recording Friday, usually Thursday, but we're recording Friday. So what we're gonna do this week is that we're gonna review NBA trade deadline that is now come and gone, and we're also going to give our predictions for the Super Bowl, Chiefs versus Eagles. A matchup everyone's excited for. I'm excited. The guys are excited. Everyone's just excited. But we're going to start off with the NBA trade deadline. Now, a bunch of stuff happened. A bunch of movement occurred. Unexpected moves, bombshells, blockbusters. There were moves that occurred when a lot of people were sleeping. And they were, I would say, franchise-altering moves, and we're going to talk about them.
So trade deadline talk is where we're going to start things off here in this one, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of to what Chris was saying, it was a big NBA trade deadline. It was a massive NBA trade deadline. It was very active, really, the whole day. The trade deadline, Dame, I know you'd agree with this, is one of those things that for the longest time we've always been hyped up about it, and we always want to hype it up because, this is a chance for teams to make moves and to make things happen. And here and there's usually like a trade or two that'll captivate people over the last couple of years. But I really do want to say this was probably the best trade deadline we've had in a while, just in regards to the main teams, to the big teams, creating big trades, big moves, and really just, I don't know what the word is, surprising us, you could say, Dame. Like a lot of teams made moves that I don't think we expected going into it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it feels like almost every team besides like our teams, the Knicks and the Heat, made deals.
Yeah. Honest to God, and even the Knicks did make a move themselves.
Oh yeah, Josh Hart. Yeah,
but we know it's really about the big players that made the deals here. So we are going to be talking about them. We're also going to mention a couple of the smaller trades that happened as well in regards to teams that made movement. Especially, I think in the Western Conference, a lot of teams made some interesting moves, to say the very least. A little bit in the East as well. But let's start, actually, before we even get to the deadline deals itself, Dame, there was a trade that happened a couple days before the deadline. This stemmed from last week. This happened after we recorded the show because, death taxes and important news always breaks after we record and pub out an episode, ladies and gentlemen, is that Kyrie Irving wanted to be traded from the Brooklyn Nets. He said that he no longer wanted to be with the franchise and he wanted to get dealt. And a couple days after that request, the Nets, they made his dream, I guess, come true. Kyrie gets different dreams every so often, so this was just the latest one. He was traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, 2 second-round picks in the years 2027 and 2029, and a first-round pick completely unprotected in the deal. Very interesting, to say the very least, when it comes to that. Dame, I want to ask you about your thoughts on it first in regards to Kyrie being dealt from the Nets to the Mavericks and how the hell we got there, because I do kind of admit it was sort of out of left field because I thought they were just going to run through this season and figure it out from there. But I guess that's no longer the case no longer became the case with Kyrie in Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was definitely a shock to see that Kyrie requested a trade. I mean, it seemed like he was happy or whatever, and he was kind of balling out too. And Nets are doing pretty well. when KD was healthy, and they kind of fell off a little bit when he wasn't. But regardless, when both of them are healthy this season, they're arguably the best team in the league. So it's kind of shocking to me when he requested that trade. But when he did, you kind of felt like they were going to move him because it was just the icing on the cake with him. Like all these times where he just didn't play, all the times that he's hurt, all the antics and drama that he brings with him, and for him to just request a trade, they're like, yeah, it's just time to do it if he's going to request a trade. And you saw the teams like the Mavs, the Suns, the Lakers, I think the Heat were like, I think the Clippers are possibly teams that were interested in him. And a lot of people were like, yeah, he's definitely going to the Lakers. And even it seemed like people from his camp were kind of pushing for him to go to the Lakers too. But it came out that the Nets owner refused to trade him to the Lakers and was going to do everything possible to not send him where he wanted to go. But I do think the Mavs are a really good option because we talked about it on this podcast before where we talked about Luka and the Mavs and what they kind of needed. I said that they needed a guy that can take the pressure off Luka and kind of take over the offense by himself. And I think Kyrie is exactly what that is. Luka, whether he's on the bench or on the court without the ball, Kyrie can now run the offense, run it through him, or get the ball to other guys and distribute and play make. So I think that's really important because Luka's usage percentage, it seems like it's 100%, even though it's obviously not, but still the highest in the league. He seems like he's dribbling the ball for 20 out of 24 seconds of the shot clock, trying to make something happen for his team, and literally takes on such a burden that I think bringing a guy like Kyrie is going to do wonders for that team, especially for Luka. Is going to take so much wear and tear off his body that he's going to be a lot more fresh coming into the playoffs. Clearly, it's only half a season, but I still think it's going to be very beneficial. Kyrie's going to be able to go out and get 30 and 7-8 assists by himself, whether Luka's on the court or not. And clearly the Mavs struggle the most when Luka's on the bench. But now be able to put in a guy like Kyrie Irving over a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie is going to do wonders for them, for that offense. It's going to run a lot more smoothly. It's not going to be as negative as they're not going to be down as much when Luka goes out the game. He kind of could give him more of a rest too. So that's important. Clearly the defense, it doesn't really help, but you weren't getting much defense from Spencer Dinwiddie anyway. This team still has holes, clearly. You can always use wing shooters and wing defenders and a big man in the paint too. I think that's their biggest issue there, paint presence. But I think their number one thing was getting that guy alongside Luka that could take all this pressure off him. And that's exactly what Kyrie is. As long as he doesn't make up any antics or he sits out games or stuff like that or something offends him.
Yeah, so from the Nets perspective, obviously when it comes to Kyrie with this last second request, literally last second, he does this a week before the deadline. He wants to get moved. They have to try to go quickly. And I was actually not surprised with the value they got. I'm amazed that they even still got like a pick out of this, even multiple, even though technically only one of them is a first round pick and far into the future. I believe it's the 2029 first for the deal in and of itself. But with a guy like Kyrie, who's still missed some time this season, has consistently missed time throughout his career. I don't think he's played 70 plus games since he was in a Cavs uniform. So durability is not his best ability in any way, shape, or form. Clearly, all that has to do with being on the court itself, but him being available on the court is kind of here nor there. The Nets got a little something back. They got two veteran rotational pieces back, which hindsight 2020, I think we all thought that they were going to trade at the deadline, but clearly the Nets plan to try to still be a competitive team here going forward. So because of that, they decided to go against that thought process, go against that, and keep Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith. I especially like the Finney-Smith signing or aspect of the deal. I think he's a great wing defender, 3-and-D player who's just a good fit in a locker room, and I think him coming off the bench, considering the other trade the Nets made with some of the pieces they got, we'll talk about that here in a couple of moments, was great. I think Spencer Dinwiddie in and of itself is not bad. He's a fine player. He's more of a support piece role player, but I mean, the Brooklyn Nets are basically a whole support piece role player team at this point of time. So to get that plus the first in a couple seconds, and apparently, Dame, new revelation for us, second round picks are extremely valuable today in the NBA, especially come trades and trading for pieces. So some second round picks doesn't hurt the Nets there in any way, shape, or form. I liked what they got because at the end of the day, you're talking about an asset that was on the last year of their deal is not guaranteed to re-sign with the team that he was traded to and could very well leave come the summer. So I think the Nets got the most they could for Kyrie, and I kind of have to applaud them for that. On the flip side of things, here's my thing for Dallas, because I think it's a catch-22. you got the exact player type you wanted. You got the guy who could score in bunches to support Luka. You got the guy who could take that burden off of Luka offensively. You got the guy who could take the playmaking burden off of Luka for that team. A guy who, when Luka sits, if you stagnate the minutes properly, you'll be able to still get that offensive production. At the same time, it's Kyrie. And look, we've been outspoken as a group on this podcast before, but I know this might be harsh, but I'm saying it. Kyrie Irving has clearly proven that he's a locker room cancer. He's a net negative to any organization that has acquired him ever since the Cleveland Cavaliers traded him, and it's not even close. Like, straight up, his tenure in Boston, failure. His tenure in Brooklyn, failure. And now these couple months that he has in Dallas, I don't like. I get why the Mavs did this. I really do. They did need that second guy next to Luka, and the fact that they also still kept Christian Wood, I think, is applauded, because I think in their first package to the Nets, according to rumors, they actually put Christian Wood in that deal. The Nets declined that, and then they accepted this one. So you still have Christian Wood, who's now really the third best player on that team, which I think is a positive. But now you bring in this guy who he just ruins locker rooms. He does. This cannot be denied. This is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. If you fool me a third time, I think we have to, test you for some concussion-like issues that, we've had to test Tua here in the NFL for the last couple months. Like, what the hell is going on here? I understand it. I understand why Dallas did this, and this kind of player, the talent level of Kyrie Irving can never be denied, and I've never denied his talent. But I can very much see this blowing up in the face of the Dallas Mavericks and him leaving them high and dry come the offseason. So that is the price that you pay when it comes to deals like this. That's why it's the NBA trade deadline. And the NBA trade deadline is a great risk/reward thing. And man, the reward could be great for Dallas here, but man, the risk is high too. Like I said, this is the kind of player they got that they needed next to Luka. And this is even a higher talent level of a player than I think I would have expected them to get next to him. But at the same time, it's just, I know it's going to work on the court for the most part, but come the playoffs, come the fourth quarter, I think it's different. Like, that first game for the Mavericks with Kyrie and Luka was out against the Clippers that they won. And Luka was, all hyped and happy that Kyrie was doing his thing. We've seen some clips of Kyrie in practice. There's a massive difference between cheering your teammate when it's on the practice, when you're not playing, and when it's in practice, versus it's crunch time. It's the fourth quarter here late in the regular season. It's the big time moments in the playoffs. Because who's going to get the ball? Because both Luka and Kyrie have hit big shots. You can give me the whole, he hit the big shot in the finals, et cetera, et cetera. Luka has hit some game winners in his career as well. Luka's hit some big shots for the Mavericks in the playoffs as well. So I don't know. Like, I think this is what they needed, but now this is like the personality that they're bringing into the organization. Things could go south very quick, especially for me, Dame, something kind of underrated here. I know he's done an amazing job here in his second tenure as a head coach, but Jason Kidd and Kyrie Irving is a dynamic that I'm really interested to see how it ends up playing out at the end of the day. I don't think that's something we're talking about enough in regards to the whole Kyrie to Dallas thing, just the dynamic that he's going to have with his head coach, because he's clearly had head coaching issues in his career previously, in Brooklyn specifically as well. So now we're going to see how it ends up working here with the Mavericks. Just one thing to note, because as you people have probably heard, Chris is unable to join the show, so I do have Chris's notes and what his thoughts are about this. Nets, his thoughts, the Nets didn't get the best package possible, but were against time and, of course, all the other factors that I said. He does like overall what the Nets got in terms of draft capital and Dorian Finney-Smith, and his words, Dinwiddie is whatever. For the Dallas Mavericks, this is what Chris says, understood why the Mavericks did it. Their window isn't guaranteed. They may have the best backcourt in the league on paper, offensively for sure. Another scorer and bucket getter and playmaker next to Luka, but Kyrie isn't reliable and may have clashing personalities with Luka. Better hope they win, because Kyrie might bounce in the offseason. I think is the perfect way to determine that, and we'll see if this is organization number 3 that Kyrie Irving leaves to hang out high and dry. So those are my thoughts on that. Moving on from that, I think that we've said our piece about that trade. Dame, let's get to a trade that happened late at night. I want to say, I mean, if you went to sleep early, you would have missed this deal. But I think for the most part, people were at least awake for this one. And we probably thought that this was going to be the last deal of the night that we ended up getting, before the trade deadline, the day before the deadline. It was a 3-team deal that we got between the Los Angeles Lakers, the Utah Jazz, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. For those teams, this is the breakdown. What the Utah Jazz got, they ended up getting Russell Westbrook from the Los Angeles Lakers with the expectation that he is going to be bought out. Juan Toscano Anderson, Damian Jones, a 2027 first-round pick from the Lakers that is top 4 protected, which I want to note because I saw this via Zach Lowe on Twitter. This pick will become a second-rounder if it doesn't end up being a first-rounder for Utah. So this is a first-round pick for now, but it could become a second-round pick if it doesn't break the Jazz's way. The Minnesota Timberwolves in this one got Mike Conley on a partially guaranteed deal. His deal will become fully guaranteed 48 hours after the next draft, so we'll see if Minnesota keeps him after the season. Nickeil Alexander-Walker and 3 second-round picks in the years 2024, 2025, and 2026. And they also got D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley. The Lakers got D'Angelo Russell in the trade, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. I'll start with some of the stuff that Chris had to say about this. With this deal overall. He likes the Vanderbilt addition, who adds defense and rebounding. Beasley is an underrated piece in this for them, as he's an extra shooter that can help spread out the floor for LeBron. D'Lo is the ultimate wild card of this deal and how he could potentially fit off the ball, because LeBron will, but Chris thinks LeBron will be able to make it work. D'Lo can take off pressure from LeBron when it comes to playmaking and also in terms of offense and shooting, and the potential of a D'Lo and AD pick and roll will certainly be something to watch. From the Utah Jazz perspective, Chris says that they got their pick, so success, I guess. I'm sure he would have a lot to say after hearing what I just said about that pick. And then he said the Minnesota Timberwolves vibes were bad, so Mike Conley will be a good locker room presence for them to unify them a bit. They still want to win, in Chris's words, LOL. So they're trying to squeeze the last quality year out of that Conley might have left, which I think is, kind of true considering next season they could cut bait with him at not a big cost. I'm in relative agreement with what Chris has to say here. I think the Lakers get a big W in this trade. I love the fact that they got rid of Russell Westbrook as a whole. I don't want to, completely slander him for how this Lakers tenure ended up like a bunch of other people will, but I will say that this was just a net positive for the organization. I think D'Angelo Russell has the potential to work with LeBron and AD. They just need to be able to, like I said, with the Mavericks, get the lineup in a way where they can make it work. At times, D'Lo will play with them. At times, maybe D'Lo leads a unit where it's just him and AD, where D'Lo could be the one taking control of the offense, which I think is something that he does have the potential to do in spurts, not for a total game, but in spurts. And I think this is a great team for him to do it on. I like Malik Beasley as a shooter. This is the simplest way. We've said this on the show before, Dame. The way that LeBron and/or an AD team can have success is you put defenders and shooters out there. Malik Beasley is a solid defender. He's got some length, but he's a really good shooter. And you want to talk about rebounding and defense. Jared Vanderbilt has become one of the most coveted young players in the league because of those aspects of him, because of those underrated things. He can rebound with the best of them, I think, in terms of like a per 48-minute basis, in terms of his advanced numbers. He's such a good complementary piece on the floor there. And his defense, dude was next to Karl Anthony Towns for a season, and had to do all he could for the defense. And now on this Utah team, an underrated reason as to why they were good enough. At the end of the day, I think this was a massive W for the Lakers, like Chris said. And I think they still have the flexibility here to do stuff in future off seasons because none of these guys are locked in long term. So I think that's the biggest thing for the Lakers overall. I think this gives them, peace with ending the whole Westbrook saga. And now this gives them a chance to at least, capture and go for the 10th spot in the play-in, which I think is very much attainable for them, even though it's been rough goings as of late. I think for the Utah Jazz, they got what they could from this deal. They didn't want Westbrook. They just wanted the extra pick that they got, and they're getting that. And then the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm with Chris. I think Mike Conley over D'Angelo Russell in terms of a team chemistry perspective, in terms of a perspective that he is going to take a massive backseat in terms of the stars on this team with Karl Anthony Towns, but more importantly, Anthony Edwards, who's absolutely been balling this season. And he was with Rudy Gobert in Utah for at least a season or two, so there's a little bit of chemistry. I'm sure Rudy Gobert can vouch for how great of a guy Mike Conley is. I think we all know all around the league, Mike Conley is such a, valued veteran. I think he's going to be able to stabilize things in Minnesota as they are also trying to fight for a play-in spot, because I would guess, and I think you probably agree here, Dame, that I don't think the Lakers or Wolves are going to get into the top 6, but the play-in tournament is very much in play for both of those squads. So that's both mine. Chris's breakdown and analysis of it. Dame, what were your thoughts on the 3-team deal?
So for starting with the Timberwolves, it seemed like they were trying to move D'Angelo Russell since he got there. So it was inevitable that he was going to get moved at some point with the fact that he was a free agent at the end of the year. And moving him and switching him with Mike Conley, I think, is a better fit because D'Angelo Russell is more of like a scorer than a distributor at the point guard position. And I think Mike Conley bringing that veteran presence and being more of a distributor than D'Angelo Russell is, I think benefits that team more because they need someone to get that ball to the bigs and to Anthony Edwards instead of being a guy that's kind of focused on getting 20 points or whatever the case may be. They did give up obviously Malik Beasley and Vanderbilt, but I think to get rid of D'Angelo Russell and get a guy who can help them win now, because that's what they're trying to do. I think that's beneficial for them. For the Jazz, it's all about getting as many picks as possible, and they're also looking to move Mike Conley for a while now, and they're clearly in a full rebuild now with the Lakers 2027 pick. I think they have like 15 first round picks through 2029. Although it is protected 1 through 4, I don't think it's gonna really be in the 1 through 4. So I think they'll be able to keep it. And clearly, getting Russell Westbrook, you're just gonna buy him out. So it's really about just getting that one first round pick, which is important because you don't know where the Lakers are going to be at that point. And then for the Lakers, obviously, just getting rid of Russell Westbrook, I think, is a plus. I just think if you just straight up released him and got nothing back, I think that would be a huge addition to the team. He just was not a good teammate. Obviously, he wasn't that good on the court. It just wasn't a good fit from the start. But they actually did get a bunch back for him. I think getting a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who has played in LA, so he has played on the biggest stage, so you don't have to worry about him kind of just being a guy that can play in these small cities and not play on the biggest stage, because he's done it before and he's been pretty good for the Lakers when he first got drafted there. And then obviously he can shoot as well. And then adding a guy like Malik Beasley, another guy who can go out and get you 20 and shoot 3 ball, I think that's very important as well. Putting him on the wing alongside LeBron James, and getting a guy like Jared Vanderbilt. I think he's probably the best defender in this deal, which I think is important because as much as the Lakers need shooting, they need defense as well because their defense is god awful. If you watch the Thunder game of when LeBron broke the record, they literally couldn't stop anybody. So getting those 3 guys for Russell Westbrook and a 1 first round pick, where a lot of people expected them to need to give up both first round picks, I think is extremely big for them. Do I think it makes them a true championship contender? No. But I do think it'll make them good enough to make the play-in or the playoffs in general. And you need to do whatever you can to kind of change the way this team has been, because it seems like they've been dead the past couple games, and they just need a new source of energy. And I think getting rid of Russell Westbrook and bringing in 3 guys who can shoot the ball and give you high energy was extremely big for them.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see, what the Lakers can do from this. They've said for the longest time, and Lakers fans, LeBron fans, etc., have said for the longest time, I think even general NBA fans, we just said, once they get rid of Russ and get something back, they'll be able to make something with this team. Well, I mean, you finally got that wish. You've gotten rid of Russ. You only have to give up one of the 2 first round picks that they have in the future. So the Lakers still have their 2029 pick in their back pocket for a trade down the line. Although I'm pretty sure at this point they would like to keep that pick and not have to do anything else. We'll see what they could do here. Again, with D'Lo, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt they're in a much better place than what they were pre this deal. I think that they have given themselves a better chance, to say the very least, in regards to that. Just before we continue to the last trade, I actually would just like to say something that I'm seeing the notification now. Anthony Edwards, who I actually just mentioned here recently, Pascal Siakam, and De'Aaron Fox are all expected to be named All-Star Reserve replacements for guys that are going to be missing the game due to injury. So shout out to those guys for that in and of itself. All right, the last big time trade that we're going to spend a lot of time here talking about before we move on from, well, no, we're still going to talk about a little minor trades here, but the last big deal, this happened. This is the deal that Chris was alluding to in terms of we were all basically asleep. Dame, I don't know if you woke up during the night and you saw this. Myself personally, because I was traveling that day, I woke up at my alarm, got up, looked at my phone, saw it happen, and I was just like, what on earth did I miss when I freaking shut my eyes, ladies and gentlemen? But the Brooklyn Nets were not done because they dealt Kyrie Irving. They also dealt Kevin Durant to the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns get Kevin Durant, who has 3 years left after this season on his contract, and TJ Warren in exchange for the package that is the following. The Brooklyn Nets got this. They got Mikal Bridges, a Defensive Player of the Year candidate from last season, Cam Johnson, a fine role player who is going to be due a contract this offseason, Jay Crowder, who they then flipped to the Bucks for 5 second-round picks. We could, detail that a little bit more here in a couple moments. First round picks, I believe, unprotected in 2023, 2025, 2027, and 2029, and the right to swap first round picks in the year 2028. Again, that's like the main way that you're able to get out of the Stepien rule, however the heck you pronounce that at this point. I've always struggled with that. And that is to be able to swap picks. So 5 first-round picks and 2 very valuable role players go there, and then they flipped another guy for just more second-round picks. As we said, Dame, a lot of second-round picks involved. I think I forget the exact final numbers. Either 42 or 43 second-round picks were dealt from the Lakers deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves to the Durant deal to all the trades that we saw properly happen on deadline day. Second round picks just flying left and right in this league. But let's talk about this deal in particular here, Dame. The fact that the Brooklyn Nets, they completely tear it down. They completely give it up. I'm going to go with Chris's analysis here real quick, just because I think this will be a great starting point for us. He was surprised that KD was traded, obviously. Nets got the best package available. Surprised that Ayton wasn't involved in it. Probably, I mean, he could have been traded, but I think the Suns were able to finesse it because Kevin Durant probably did ask out behind the scenes after what happened with Kyrie. Chris says mid-range galore for the Phoenix Suns now that it's Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant. The Phoenix bench is now pretty thin. It is pretty thin. They gave up a lot of important wing pieces there. And, they did make another trade or two. I'll just mention it here. Darius Baisley, they got him from the Oklahoma City Thunder for Dario Saric and a second-round pick. And they did get TJ Ward in this deal. So they did get a little bit of their wing depth back. But for the most part, Chris is right. I think they're not as deep and not as talented in terms of role players after this trade. Suns have to win the chip now. They've given themselves a little window of time here. And in the words of Chris, I know you'll enjoy this, Dame. Chris says, in all caps, fuck Brooklyn, laugh my ass off, what a failure. So there's that, to say the very least. Dame, I want to throw it to you. Off of what Chris gave us to start with, what are your thoughts, machinations, and breakdowns of the Kevin Durant to Phoenix Suns trade?
Yeah, I could care less what Brooklyn thinks about it because they're the biggest failure in basketball in the longest time from what I've seen. They've had like 50 different million directions that they wanted to go in, and every single one failed. So it's a great feeling as a Knicks fan and as a New York fan because they're not a real New York team. However, for the Suns, I love it. Honestly, the Suns have been rumored with Kevin Durant since he requested a trade in the summer. It seemed like that was his preferred destination when he was going to get traded. I saw a report today that the Memphis Grizzlies were prepared to offer every single pick and every single pick swap they had for Durant. But the Nets ownership and front office had such a good relationship with Kevin Durant and adored him that they wanted to send him somewhere he wanted to go, and the Suns were that. And they were able to work something out where I think they got a pretty good deal for him. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges are excellent players, excellent young players as well. And 4 first-round picks, another pick swap, I think is amazing. And really, I don't know what else you'd get better because I don't know, although the Grizzlies maybe offered all those picks and swaps, I don't know what players they could have offered the Nets to kind of top Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson on top of the picks. So I think that for Kevin Durant specifically is great. Going to where he wants to be, playing with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. I mean, what player in NBA history has had a better life than Kevin Durant? I mean, starts his career at Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Ibaka. Goes to Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond. Goes to Kyrie Irving and James Harden. Then gets Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons. Now he gets Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. I mean, no player in NBA history has had a better life than Kevin Durant, and somehow he only has 2 rings to show for it, which is it blows my mind. It makes no sense. But for the Suns, it's clearly championship or bust now. They should be the favorites in the West, in my opinion. I get it; their depth isn't as good, but when you put out 4 out of your 5 starters as Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton, most games, closing out games, you'll be all right. I mean, Devin Booker, a big thing with him, he's never going to see your best defender ever again with Kevin Durant on the floor. So that's going to be open up a whole new game for him. Chris Paul's going to have so much to distribute to. DeAndre is never, ever going to get double teamed down the post again. Kevin Durant obviously is going to have so much space now with Devin Booker alongside him. He's not going to have that much pressure on him. Same with Devin Booker, obviously, like I just mentioned. TJ Warren, I think, is a very underrated piece of this trade. I think he's a guy who can come off the bench and give you 20. So I think that's very important as well. I'm sure they're going to be very active in the buyout market. I already saw they're very interested in Reggie Jackson, which I think would be a great move. And many other guys are going to hit the buyout market, which I think a lot of them are going to be heavily interested in joining the Suns and the Suns vice versa. So I think the Suns will be okay on the depth part because of, I mean, you can't have an all-star lineup from 1 to 10. You're gonna have, if you have 4 players of Kevin Durant, Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre, and you're gonna have some depth problems, But I'm pretty sure any team would trade Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson in exchange for Kevin Durant. Like, you take that any time of the day. Durant is a top 5 player in the league. Yeah, I mean, the Nets are garbage. The big disgrace, a clown show. And for the Suns, we're going to see how it goes because I feel like their top 3 guys from Chris Paul, KD and Devin Booker have all had their injury problems in the regular season and postseason. So I think that's actually going to be the biggest key here, is them being able to stay healthy. Because if they're not, like we mentioned, they don't have the depth to kind of back them up, and they're notorious for being hurt. Devin Booker and Chris Paul, especially in the postseason, a lot of the times they are hurt. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, this was definitely the biggest blockbuster of the deadline, where a lot of us are sleeping, especially me, and I woke up to see in the morning. So big move on both sides, and definitely shocked a lot of people waking up.
Yeah, for certain there. And you mentioned, we talk about the Mavericks and the Suns here reaping the benefit of the Nets' complete destruction and malfunction there. The Mavericks currently the 4th seed in the West. The Suns currently the 6th seed. We'll see if those teams are able to skyrocket up in the standings, all things considered here. With the Phoenix Suns, obviously you get that bona fide number one guy. Kevin Durant is now the alpha scorer of this team. And you mentioned it's going to make life easier for Devin Booker in terms of not being the first guy, the top guy on the scouting report now. Chris Paul has a lot of distributing options in terms of fellow stars that he doesn't need to take up the burden like he did in that little run to the finals they had. I'm very interested to see Kevin Durant and Ayton on the court together, just because I think Kevin Durant likes to try to operate from the low block here and there. One of his favorite moves and shots he likes to take is that little post up jumper where he completely just uses his height. Ayton being a post-up player first and like a decent but not great mid-range player. Maybe he's a little bit above average. Maybe I'm being a little bit too hard. I want to see how they're able to make that work, but I'm sure with the talent of Kevin Durant and with his ability to just shoot mid-ranges and threes, I think it'll work in and of itself. So ultimately, this is a big-time deal for the Suns. This is a championship-winning move they're trying to make here. And now they've given themselves a window here. I think what I always like to see is teams giving themselves a window. The Phoenix Suns have a 3-year window now because Kevin Durant still has 3 years left on his contract that he signed when he was still with the Nets after this season. And it's going to be him and Devin Booker. DeAndre Ayton was there recently signed on a fresh 4-year deal. So ironically, him and Kevin Durant are on the same term. I think Devin Booker is probably definitely there for at least past next season. Chris Paul's the only guy that it's not a fully guaranteed deal after this year. So there's maybe some room to play around there for Phoenix. But simply put, it's championship or bust with the Suns. They're currently the 6th seed. I predicted before the season, I think we all predicted that the Suns wouldn't exactly be the same team that they have been the last 2 seasons, where they were the top seed in the West after the regular season and made it to the finals the year before. But now this deal absolutely negates everything. And this is why it's so interesting to see how the season evolves. And now you have this Phoenix Suns team really going. And this is Chris talked about how for the Mavericks, like this is the Kyrie deal was for their championship window because it's not guaranteed. I think this was a similar deal for the Phoenix Suns. I think James Jones and Suns management overall saw that there was clearly a window with this team and that it was starting to shut and that they needed to make the move to try to keep it open as much as possible. And getting a Kevin Durant in their mind is going to be the key to keeping this window open. Monty Williams has a lot of talent he gets to work with there in Phoenix now, and we'll see how he's able to get it to work, how he's able to get the offense going. It's going to take a couple games here for Booker and Durant. I mean, Booker's been hurt for a lot of the season, but it's going to take a couple games when all those guys are eventually on the court together to be able to make it work. And that to me is going to be the big thing, because the thing that ultimately screwed the Nets over was health. Their big three was together for what, Dame, 16, 17 games? And now you need to hopefully rely on this team to put it all together. DeAndre Ayton is, weirdly enough, probably the most healthy of these guys consistently throughout the last couple seasons. But Chris Paul's missed time, like you said. Devin Booker has missed time, especially this season. And now Kevin Durant has missed time. I'm pretty sure like I mentioned, with the guys who are replacing, I think Kevin Durant has already said that he's going to not play in the All-Star game, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a team that the end product of what we could see could be lethal, but we need to see it together. And if that sounds familiar, it's what happened with Brooklyn. Let me go to Brooklyn here really quick. I know we can dump on them, and they obviously allowed it to happen with Kyrie and KD. And I've been tough on Kyrie and KD, and I will continue to be tough on them as it merits it. But the Nets front office allowed this to take place and happen. From letting the two guys come in, from letting them dictate what they want on the roster, from letting them fire Kenny Atkinson, to not want a head coach that would be such a hard ass, you could say, which would then lead to Steve Nash being there. And then they didn't want Steve Nash, even though they wanted a coach that wouldn't be as tough on them and that would just let them play. I think for all the mistakes that the Nets did, they followed them too much. And I've always said that there's going to be long-term repercussions for what Kevin Durant and Kyrie made a muck of in Brooklyn. And I think there will be, especially when it comes to an NBA, CBA perspective. But clearly the Nets were a failure. They were unable to make it work. And like you said, Dame, I think the Nets themselves are going to be the biggest failure here, because this is now the second time that they've tried to assemble a big three / super team, and it just didn't work. The first failure was with Darren Williams and Joe Johnson and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett that led to the period of time where this team was completely in the dumpster. And then that one shining light season with D'Angelo Russell that I kind of alluded to earlier, then was the catalyst for them to get Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and for all this to happen. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the Brooklyn Nets are a failure. But I will like to say this about Kyrie and KD. You two, the biggest jokesters in the league, better make it work where you are, or in terms of Kyrie, where you're eventually probably going to go, because again, I highly doubt he's going to stay in Dallas. I don't have any faith in him to stay anywhere longer than 2 to 3 seasons tops at this point, aside from that first run in Cleveland, which again, I still do not, I still give LeBron all the props in the world, the fact that he was able to keep Kyrie on the leash for as long as he did. But the fact that Kyrie said that, what was the quote, Dame? That he's happy that KD got out of here? Is that what he said?
Yeah, he says he's like happy for him that he got out of there or something like that, which I don't know what that means, but
look, I'm saying this right now. For all the imperfections that I just said about the Nets front office in terms of dealing with these two, I am so glad that they got rid of them, because these two are the biggest fucking jokesters and schmucks in the league. They had that front office bend to their whim on every single decision. They had that front office fire Kenny Atkinson to get Steve Nash. They then had Steve Nash fired. They wanted Ime Udoka, most likely, and the Nets took a stand like, no, we're not going to hire a guy that just got suspended from his last stop for, we still really don't even know what the exact reason is. That's still being kept under hush-hush. They're the guys that wanted the roster constructed in their image. They're the guys that wanted, all these random old players there. And then if they had a problem, they would want somebody cut. They're the ones that wanted Jarrett Allen traded so their best friend DeAndre Jordan could play more minutes on that team. This is the stupidest thing in the world. So for all the criticism that we can give and will give the Nets front office going forward, we better lob just as much, if not more, to these two absolute idiots who thought that they could run things and clearly failed. So to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, yes, you're on new teams, but to assume that everything was the Nets front office problem, let me be very clear with this. Straight up, screw you. Like, no. This is, to me, more on them than anything. If we're going to give you the whole player empowerment thing and you're going to be the one to take control of the organization, you're going to get more of the blame for it failing. For everything we give LeBron about the Westbrook thing, they deserve 10 times more of that for this. Because this was a failure on everyone's part, on Brooklyn, on Durant for allowing Kyrie to act like a freaking child for this, and on Kyrie Irving in particular. Like, this is the biggest joke in NBA history is finally over, and let's hope that, we could be dead and done with that. Although probably not. But that's what I have to say, at least about the Nets and that whole debacle in and of itself, and especially those two. So, moving on from that, because that summarizes all the big-time trades, but there were still some minor deals that happened here, Dame, around the league. We're not going to go fully into detail, but I do just want to bring up a couple of these things that happened because it's worth noting. We mentioned the Los Angeles Lakers and the trades they made. They weren't the trade they made. They were not done trading, and the Clippers were clearly very busy in and of themselves. Dame, whenever you want to chime in here, you can. But the Los Angeles Lakers also dealt Thomas Bryant to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Devon Reed and 3 second-round picks. And they also traded Pat Beverly, who is expected to be bought out to the Orlando Magic, along with a second-round pick for old buddy Mo Bamba. Very unexpected, to say the very least. In and of itself, Chris was very much a fan of it. Mo Bamba is a low-risk, high-reward kind of deal. The Thomas Bryant loss could hurt because he was playing well, and he has the defense that Bamba doesn't. And Pat Beverly, in Chris's words, getting rid of Pat Beverly is always a plus. But it was very interesting, to say the very least, with how that ended up going for the Lakers to do a little bit of a bench reset here. They lose one big man who apparently, I saw this after, that Thomas Bryant apparently requested the trade out of LA, which was very interesting to say the very least. And they get Mo Bamba back there with a couple second-round picks to play with in the future from that Denver Nuggets deal as well. Probably just opens up a little bit more space in the rotation for a guy or two, especially I think Jared Vanderbilt and his defensive versatility again, and maybe Mo Bamba could be able to do something with this team. But the Los Angeles Clippers were the busy team in LA here, Dame. They got Mason Plumlee from the Charlotte Hornets for Reggie Jackson and a 2028 second-round pick. Reggie Jackson is expected to be bought out by the Charlotte Hornets. Eric Gordon was traded to the Clippers. John Wall and Danny Green were traded to the Rockets, and Luke Kennard was sent to the Memphis Grizzlies. That ended up being a 3-team deal. John Wall is also expected to be bought out. I say expected. We haven't officially seen it. These guys probably will be bought out by the time you all listen to this, but I just want to say that for, current timing. Eric Gordon to the Clippers. And finally, and this was the biggest shock to me, Dame, Bones Highland to the Los Angeles Clippers for just 2 second-round picks, which I think the Nuggets used those second-round picks in the Thomas Bryant deal that I just aforementioned. So the LA teams here first, really fast, Dame. Maybe not so much on the Lakers because, they just made minor moves. Mo Bamba for Thomas Bryant. I personally don't think that's that big of a difference. I think Mo Bamba is just, still tall, pretty athletic. It could work. but the Clippers, especially adding 3 guys here who will be able to make things work. Mason Plumlee, a backup for Zubac, but more importantly, Eric Gordon, who could potentially find his way with just the shooting, and Bones Highland, out of all people. I think that was easily, to me, the most shocking deal of the day in terms of role players being dealt.
That's definitely something I didn't expect. I know the Nuggets are trying to move him, but just for 2 second-round picks, I thought they might have got like a rotational role player that they thought would just fit the team better. But just trading for 2 second-round picks was definitely shocking. I'm surprised that a lot of other teams weren't more interested in that because he's a young guy. He's not like a veteran role player that is aging away or something like that. He's very young, very cheap as well for the next few years too. So I'm shocked a lot more teams aren't interested, but they did then move those second round picks to get Thomas Bryant, which I think is a really good addition. I was surprised the Lakers moved him at all. But then I saw that that he requested trade after his minutes being dumbed down after Anthony Davis got hurt. But I mean, it's pretty obvious that Anthony Davis is going to get hurt again, and he probably would have got a lot more minutes going forward. But whatever case may be, he asked out, and I think Nuggets is a really good spot. Playing behind Jokic, playing behind on a team that's the number 1 seed in the West, I think is really going to help him as well. The Lakers getting Mo Bamba and getting rid of Patrick Beverley, I think, is a great move as well. A young, lengthy center who can shoot the ball and getting rid of Patrick Beverley, who's arguably one of the worst players in the league, I think is great too. So I do like what the Lakers did. I think they definitely improved and definitely got younger, which I think is very important. Younger and be able to run and shoot, I think was very good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. There, the last main trade that I want to talk about. This is a real doozy to say the very least. I will say, I know I mentioned it earlier. Jay Crowder was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks in that deal, and in subsequently doing that, the Bucks also ended up trading Serge Ibaka, George Hill, and Jordan Nwora to the Indiana Pacers. In that, the Serge Ibaka is likely to be bought out as well. Probably. There's no reason for him to really be on the Pacers. But the last notable trade or trades I'm technically going to bring up here, you could kind of say this is like a convoluted 4-team deal, but I'm just going to say that this was a 3-team deal that then became 1v1 between 2 other teams. The Atlanta Hawks, Detroit Pistons, and Golden State Warriors worked together on something. The Detroit Pistons ended up trading Saddiq Bey to the Atlanta Hawks and Kevin Knox to the Golden State Warriors. The Detroit Pistons got James Wiseman in return from Golden State, which a former number 2 overall pick being traded was not on my NBA trade deadline bingo card, but 40 second round picks apparently was. So the Warriors ended up getting Kevin Knox and 5 second rounders in that deal, which they then subsequently traded to the Portland Trailblazers for Gary Payton II, a guy that they are of course very familiar with. He was on that championship team last year, to say the very least. Comments about that: it was very interesting to be certain. This was Chris's way to summarize it. Wasn't a fan of the Warriors just salary dumping Wiseman. Understand that it gets them under the luxury tax, but just a bad look getting rid of your second overall pick without much in return. And for the Pistons, should have kept Saddiq Bey. At least I'm assuming that's for the Pistons. Because, yeah. What for me personally, with this, I will say Saddiq Bey to the Atlanta Hawks is interesting. I thought that they were probably going to get rid of John Collins, but now Saddiq Bey being there, I want to see how they're going to flex the lineup. Again, Saddiq Bey is that mold of player now. I don't know where Detroit has been playing this season. I want to thoroughly admit that. I don't know if they've been playing with the 3 or the 4. I think Saddiq Bey is a guy who works better at the 4 in terms of being able to be more versatile offensively and a better matchup overall. I don't know. I cannot comment on him definitively on the defensive end. Is he better defensively at the 3 or the 4? My first guess would be putting him at the 4, but maybe he can run well enough at the 3 if John Collins is still there and playing the 4, which John Collins is still in Atlanta Hawk, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. He's a guy that didn't get traded at the deadline, to the shock of quite a few people, because he's been in trade rumors for at least the last 2.5 years here. But Saddiq Bey going to the Atlanta Hawks just gives them another score to try to pair with those 2 guards that they have. The Detroit Pistons getting what they got back, which is James Wiseman, the former second overall pick. Marvin Bagley being hurt for the rest of the season. Jalen Durant has been fine as a rookie, but clearly this is a rehabilitation/redemption thing here for James Wiseman to see if he could make something happen in Detroit. He definitely has the opportunity. This is just a team full of a bunch of young guys. They have their top main pieces, I think, in Cade Cunningham, who I know is injured, but Cade Cunningham is one of the pieces, and Jaden Ivey, I feel, as well. They have some other pieces who are trying to perform well under these situations. Like I mentioned, Jalen Durant. Killian Hayes is having the best season of his career, so maybe if James Wiseman can find a way in there, if Dwayne Casey can maybe be a bit more friendly to Wiseman in terms of playing him as much compared to what Golden State was, then Golden State taking everything and getting a guy back clearly for a run when their team is finally healthy and going into the postseason. That's what that is about. Dame, what was the most interesting thing, or 2 maybe interesting things about this, convoluted trade to you overall?
I was just shocked that the Warriors didn't decide to keep Saddiq Bey in this trade. Obviously they traded Wiseman and just got Bey and then Bey to Atlanta for second rounders, or the case may be. I felt like Sadiq Bey would have been a great fit on their team. It feels like he already could shoot and score, but feels like anybody who can do that just becomes 2 times as good when they go to Warriors playing alongside guys like Clay and Steph and getting guys like Draymond to get them open with his moving screens and stuff. So I think Sadiq Bey would have been a great addition there. And then you still could have traded your own second round picks in order to get Gary Payne, who was obviously very vital in them winning the championship. So I think if they decided to keep Sadiq Bey and then trade their own 5 second round picks to get Gary Payne, I think those would have been 2 huge additions for them moving forward, knowing how stacked the West is up top and the moves that you saw the Suns made and the Mavs made. So it was very confusing to me why they just decided to trade They basically traded Wiseman for Gary Payton, which is very confusing to me. And they didn't really give up any more of their own assets like draft picks when they know the time is now. Steph isn't getting any younger, and you see he's getting hurt year by year now. So kind of got to maximize the time you have now. Very sad case with Wiseman though. I mean, second overall pick, so much potential, and get traded for 5 second round picks as a second overall pick. It's kind of sad, but I think him going to Detroit, where there's a lot less pressure. He's obviously not on a championship winning out team. Thank God I'm not going to see 8 different tweets a month of him getting recalled from Santa Clara, the G League team, because God, that was my most viewed tweet I've ever seen. Is just James Wiseman getting recalled from Santa Clara or getting called down to Santa Clara. Man, that shit was annoying. But I think him going to Detroit, and they said they're going to start him, I think is really good. He's going to have a lot less pressure. He's going to get a lot more minutes, a lot more opportunities. Hopefully not send down to the G League team there. But being put on a team like that, that's obviously rebuilding, a lot of young talent there too, and moving forward, they will too. So I think it's a really good first start for him. For me, I like that on all accounts. Definitely like Sadiq Bey on the Hawks as well. I think that was a really good addition. To me, it was just very confusing on the Warriors part.
So you're saying that the Motor City Cruise will not be getting James Wiseman for any games here, Dame?
I sure hope not, but I don't know with the way he's been up and down, you just never know.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm with you. I hope this is a chance for him to be able to make something. And I think Dwayne Casey has done a really good job with some of the pieces that Detroit has gotten here over the last season and a half or so. Again, Marvin Bagley was actually playing really well for Detroit last season and fine this season before he got hurt. And now maybe they could do the same thing with Wiseman. And I think next season when this core is all put back together, I think it'll help. Again, I think for Wiseman, the problem has been he's had to focus so much of his early career on having to rehab injuries. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact he only played 3 games in college because of NCAA sanctions, which I hold very much against the NCAA for that. And the fact that, he's just had such a rough start. But like you said, I think the thing here, Dame, is that he's already won a championship. He's been around guys that I think he's picked up work habits from. At least I hope he has. I'm hopeful that James Wiseman can turn this around for himself, and that he'll be able to do something at the end of the day in Detroit, and that he can. So good for him. Again, like you mentioned with the Golden State Warriors, I understand the idea of getting a veteran back in this to be able to support this team, because like you said, I think the number one focus at this point is for them to be able to support Steph, Clay, and Draymond as much as they can, especially because we still don't know Draymond's future because he is a free agent after this year. But we have to admit the Warriors probably have made a couple of mistakes. I mean, they get a guy that they let go in the offseason. I think now hindsight 2020, I don't know. Has he played well enough this season, Andrew Wiggins, Dame? Do you think they should have kept Andrew Wiggins to the deal they did, or they could have just let him walk or something? The Warriors have made some head-scratching decisions here recently. And this one I'm kind of 50-50 with. They get a guy back that they could use, but they didn't need to lose James Wiseman to get here.
The price tag was very high. I think they definitely overpaid for him. I think it's just coming off a championship, and I think he did play a big role in them winning championship defensively, being that long wing that can play defense and score the ball, and he had a really good final. So I think the fact that they won the championship kind of forced them to overpay and kind of keep him. I think that if they didn't win the championship, there might be a better chance that he's not on the team and they didn't pay for that. So I think a lot of it has to do with them winning the championship.
Yeah, it certainly has affected what they did with Wiggins, and now with having to lose Gary Payton because he got paid, and now getting him back, everything they've done. Golden State, I get the idea, but the execution is certainly, I think the execution warrants a little bit of criticism. I think they have gotten a little bit of criticism from analysts on NBA Twitter overall. And right now, the Golden State Warriors are only the 9th seed. They're actually behind both the Pelicans and the Minnesota Timberwolves here in just a Western Conference that is absolutely just, so bunched up. They are only 1 game behind the Suns for the 6th seed, so you never know here. But to say the very least, the NBA trade deadline has come and gone, and the NBA as a whole is certainly going to be interesting here to watch out for. I just mentioned what the play-in is looking like in the West. You got the Pelicans, Timberwolves, Golden State Warriors, and Portland Trail Blazers, with the Lakers that are still going to be trying to find their way in there. While in the Eastern Conference, you have the top two teams in the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks. You got some organizations between those squads, or you got organizations under them that are going to be going after those teams, like the 76ers, like the Cavaliers, like the Miami Heat, et cetera, et cetera. I think, that just about does it here. I know we could talk about some teams that maybe didn't make moves, but I think that we can maybe table that discussion to wait and see what the buyout market is going to be. I've mentioned a lot of names here recently from these trades that are going to end up getting bought out or are projected to get bought out. Serge Ibaka, Russell Westbrook, Patrick Beverley, John Wall are like the biggest names in terms of who is projected to / potentially could end up getting bought out. I think Will Barton from the Wizards is another guy that's projected to end up getting bought out here. Reggie Jackson is expected to be bought out. So many guys are going to be bought out here. I think it's best that we table the discussion of maybe a couple certain teams here for about a week or so before we really talk about that, because teams that aren't active at the deadline are sometimes pretty active in the buyout market here. So we could say that. Dave, do you have any last comments about the frenzy of the trade deadline, or maybe any early thoughts about what the teams could be doing in the buyout market going into the last stretch of the season here?
The buyout market, I think, is going to be very interesting. I don't know the players off the top of my head, but I remember seeing the list yesterday, and there's a lot of quality players there that can make an impact on a lot of these teams. I think the Mavs, the Suns, obviously the Lakers, a lot of these teams that are at the top are always very active in the buyout market. Guys like Patrick Beverley, Reggie Jackson, Kevin Love, I think is going to be an interesting one because the Cavs are competitive and winning games, but he doesn't really play that much of a role there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, there's always a lot of quality veterans on the buyout market that always, usually when they go to contenders, make a good impact on that team. So I'm really excited to see what the buyout market is going to be for the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely be talking about that in terms of a couple teams in particular. My team, even the Miami Heat, could find themselves in the buyout market. Even the Knicks probably could do so. The Milwaukee Bucks traded a lot of guys, and they got back Jay Crowder. I think they're definitely going to be a team to watch out for. I think they could pick up a guard in the buyout market in terms of who could end up being available, to say the very least. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the NBA portion. I know there was a lot, but Jesus Christ, a lot happened when it comes to the NBA trade deadline, and a lot of projecting going forward. We're definitely going to be revisiting it in maybe not next week, maybe the week after, but we are going to be revisiting the NBA season, of course, as the playoffs are slowly going to be approaching. We are going to be past the All-Star break here relatively soon here within the next week and a half or so, and then we can really talk about the end of the season. I think there's going to be a lot of discussions to talk about in terms of who are the contenders, who are the contenders, who are the pretenders, teams that we think could make a run here, et cetera, on that. That'll be for future weeks. But for now, while we look ahead, very slowly to the NBA playoffs, there's one thing we don't need to look ahead to because it's here, ladies and gentlemen. The final game of the NFL season, the granddaddy of them all, the Super Bowl, is upon us. The dust has settled, the battles have been fought, and now there are two teams remaining in this NFL season. In the AFC, the 5-time AFC Championship appearance, now 3 times in the last 5 seasons AFC champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, led by Patrick Moneyboy Mahomes, as I like to call him, and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and that squad, versus the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles, led by Jalen Hurts, led by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, led by a stellar rushing attack, led by the technically not number 1 defense that finished the regular season of football, but man, that defense is a good 4 guys that got a lot of sacks. So many different ways that we could go about this game here, Dame. I will try my best to start us off in terms of the analysis. We will start with analysis, guys, and then we will give our predictions once we have settled everything. I think from the the number 1 battle here to me, Dame, when it comes to this Super Bowl matchup, is going to be the battle of the trenches. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs, I believe I saw that they have the top pass block win rate in the league of the teams that were left in the postseason, and the Eagles had the best pass defense win rate, pass rush win rate, I want to say. So this is the top offensive line that was remaining. Of course, you got an offensive line that is absolutely built with Orlando Brown Jr., with Creed Humphrey, and the squad that they have for themselves here. You have that Kansas City you have the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line, like I said, that got 4 guys with double-digit sacks in this season, with the likes of Hargrave and Hassan Reddick. Just a lot of talent in the trenches between these two teams. I don't want to discount the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line in particular, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs will be interesting with Frank Clark and Chris Jones really turning up in the postseason, especially in that game against the Cincinnati Bengals, where we mentioned they got 5 sacks and a lot more quarterback pressures and hits on Joe Burrow overall. They could do that, and that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, led by the likes of Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey. Two absolute dogs. Jason Kelsey, a future Hall of Famer in his own right. Just want to shout out to all the guys who were inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame within the last 24 hours or so. Like, this is certainly going to be shaping up to be an interesting Super Bowl, and I think it'll start with the lines. If we move past that, Dame, I think we can agree the defensive side of things, we give that advantage to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the defensive back crew, you could argue, is at the same level, if not even more impressive than the defensive front line of the Eagles. For as much as I've said that they are the first team with four guys with 10 plus sacks, I think the defensive back crew for this team with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, with James Bradbury, with Big Play Slay, have just been absolutely outstanding this season. I think they led the NFL in turnovers forced, if I'm not mistaken. And the interceptions that all those guys got, certainly some of those guys are going to be free agents and going to get paid in the offseason for certain, whether it be by the Eagles or someone else. You got elite secondary play from the Eagles there. The Eagles offensively are no slouches. They have an amazing rushing attack that has really ran over teams. And two guys in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and also a tight end Dallas Goedert that can be great. But here's the thing. I mentioned the rushing attack and the defense because that's really how the Eagles have been winning their games. They shellacked both the Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. Excuse me. I think they only allowed 7 points to both those teams because the rushing attack wore those squads down, because the defense has been absolute gangbusters against those two teams, just overwhelming them at the line, injuring Brock Purdy, making sure Daniel Jones was going to do absolutely nothing after that game that Daniel Jones had efficiency-wise against the Minnesota Vikings. Like, they have been game wreckers. They have been game breakers, that defense has been, and the rushing attack has just been lethal. For the Kansas City Chiefs, their defense, on paper, not as overall talented in all three levels of it that the Philadelphia Eagles are, but they're going to need to take a step. I think the young linebacker Nick Bolton is going to need to make some plays. I think that young secondary with the young players that they've drafted within the last couple of years are going to need to step up. I think McDuffie was one of the guys who made a big pass deflection in the AFC Championship game. Thornhill is going to have to take that next level. Like Reed, who they got from the offseason. He's not a young guy, but they got him in the offseason from the Texans via free agency. I think that the Chiefs are certainly going to need to step up their game, I think, to the highest level they'll have to be, because this is no slouch of an organization, of a team that they're facing on all levels. But I think offensively, the number one thing that a lot of people like to default to is the quarterback battle. And could this be a game here, Dame? I just said a lot of different things I know lean towards the Eagles, but is the quarterback battle the biggest thing here that could make the difference as to why a lot of people are going to lean one way over the other? And I know I might be overstating what the quarterbacks can do, because we've seen in years past what a dominating pass rush can do to another team, especially against the Chiefs. We saw what happened with Tampa Bay a couple of years ago. But this is not that offensive line. This is an offensive line that the Chiefs have made the heavy investments to improve on. They have made it a concerted effort to make sure that Patrick Mahomes has guys, and he still has Travis Kelce, Marcus Valdes-Scantling coming off a great AFC title game. Juju Smith-Schuster has showed up at points this season, and you have the creative mastermind of Andy Reid, which Nick Sirianni, he's great, he's talented and all, but Andy Reid is the original. Doug Peterson learned from Andy Reid. Nick Sirianni learned from Doug Peterson. Ipso facto, this is like a grand master versus grand student kind of thing here, to say the very least. So that's my overall analysis. Dame, you of course could take it any which way. Like, anything I missed, anything you want to put more detail in, but especially Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, like the two different ways that those guys have performed in leading their teams to wins this postseason.
Yeah, clearly these two quarterbacks play very differently. Patrick Mahomes obviously more of a thrower. Jalen Hurts more using his legs. It's interesting because both these quarterbacks are coming into the Super Bowl with injuries that have affected their play. Jalen Hurts with his throwing shoulder and Patrick Mahomes with his ankle. Ironically, it's literally the other way that they play. If it was like Jalen Hurts' ankle or Patrick Mahomes' throwing shoulder, it would have affected what they do best most. But regardless, these two injuries have affected these players. You've seen Jalen Hurts hasn't been the same thrower since the injury, and you've seen last week that Mahomes can't really run as well outside of the last play. But, man, this is going to be such a good matchup. These teams are so evenly matched. I think the Eagles have arguably the best roster in NFL. But then you have the Chiefs, who literally have the best quarterback that we've seen maybe ever. And their defense, it's not as good as their offense because of Mahomes, but I feel like they play better in the playoffs. And their offensive line is really good as well. It's going to be a battle of the trenches, in my opinion, because the Eagles' offensive and defensive line is so good. But I think if the Chiefs' offensive line can negate that Eagles pass rush, and Hassan Reddick especially, who's had an incredible postseason, regular season as well, he's caused havoc against whoever he's gone against. I think if the Chiefs' offensive line can hold their ground, not saying be elite and allow like no sacks or no pressures, but just in the biggest moments on third down or or second down to not make it third and long, to be able to give Patrick Mahomes the time he needs to make the plays that he obviously can't make. I think that's going to be the key to the game, because I think one way or another, you can't really expect the Chiefs offense to get many sacks or much pressure on Hurts. Is all going to be about containing him inside the pocket, because he's not a great pocket thrower. He does a lot of his damage outside the pocket, whether it's throwing the ball or running the ball. So as long as they can kind of play a contained defense and maybe have a spy on him, I think they'll be okay there. But the matchup I'm looking forward to is the Eagles' defensive line and front seven versus the Chiefs' offensive line, because we have seen in a Super Bowl the Chiefs' offensive line absolutely be garbage, and we saw what that led to, that the Chiefs having like 9 points, over the case may be, against the Bucks, where it was just an absolute shit show. And Patrick Mahomes was running for his life 0.2 seconds after the ball being hiked to him. So I'm expecting a really good Super Bowl. I think it's going to be close throughout. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have a really good game. I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a really good game. I'm hoping for a high-scoring game as well, maybe like a 35-28 kind of thing. But this is going to be a very fun game. We're giving predictions now, right? You want me to just go straight to the prediction?
Yeah, if you want, or I could just say what Chris is first, so he could get us.
Oh yeah, go, Chris, and then I'll think more clearly on this prediction, because it's such a coin flip.
I don't know, dude. I've been struggling until now. Literally, what I'm about to say for my prediction will be the first like definitive prediction I've given on this game. I really think it's a coin flip. For Chris has the Chiefs defeating the Philadelphia Eagles. Like Chris said in the previous episodes, he's not going to give us a score prediction. I don't know if I'm going to give one either. Dame, if you want to, I mean, you're the bravest of us all. I'm not giving any predictions there. But in Chris's analysis of the Chiefs defeating the Eagles, you have to defeat the Eagles through the pass game. The Chiefs' offensive line needs to be on their A game, and they need to have a masterclass from Mahomes. You got the must-win for, in Chris's opinion, it's a must-win for Mahomes. Needs to start racking up championships to make legitimate arguments for his all-time case here in the pantheons of NFL quarterback play, to say the very least. I definitely think, kind of to the analysis you gave there, Dame, I think we have seen now because it's the Chiefs' third Super Bowl, I think we've seen what happens when their offensive line is on their A game. In that 49ers Super Bowl, yes, they got off to a slow start, but the last 6 minutes of that game is when they really got it going, and it just could not be stopped, and they were able to see the magic that Mahomes could do. And then we saw what happened with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that Super Bowl. But I think the thing is here, Dame, that Kansas City Chiefs team was missing. It was 3 of the 5 or 4 out of the 5 starters that they had from the previous Super Bowl matchup. They had basically all backups their entire time, where you look at this Kansas City Chiefs team, believing that they're 100% healthy. I know I mentioned Orlando Brown Jr. and Creed Humphrey, who's been an absolute monster of a center ever since he came into the league. But you got Joe Tooney, who they got a couple years ago in free agency. You got Trey Smith and Andrew Wiley. I believe that's how you say his name. In that regard, no slouches in any way, shape, or form. Now I know, I mentioned the Eagles offensive line with the likes of Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens as well. Like these are two teams that really have a lot in the trenches that you give. I really do need to give the Chiefs the advantage on the offensive line on paper, and the Eagles the advantage on the defensive line. And that's really the key here. We've seen what the defensive line can do to Patrick Mahomes and the flow of this Chiefs team in a Super Bowl, when it can go wrong and it can go right. And I think that's the big thing here. But I'm assuming this is part of your analysis here, Dame, is that Patrick Mahomes has been the better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. So before you give your official prediction here, Dame, if we could just talk about that a little bit more, where I know like the Eagles rushing attack has made up for it, but if the Chiefs can get a great performance out of their defense and they can step up, then it has to end up being on how they're going to operate offensively. And Jalen Hurts has not been at the best level here in the postseason. Now, I know part of that could maybe he's still kind of feeling it because of the injury at the end of the season, and I get that. But he has not been the reason that they're winning. And if this is anywhere near a close game, that it has to come down to the throwing. I know, I praise the Eagles secondary, but Patrick Mahomes has become so cerebral, so pinpoint. He's now the 2-time MVP winner. He has been the one to make the winning throws in the postseasons past. Jalen Hurts hasn't. And I know it's all about the trenches, and I don't want to ignore that because it's bitten me in the past here with our Super Bowl predictions. But I think it's worth noting that these teams, there's just something there, right? Like there's got to be something to Patrick Mahomes has been the better quarterback than Jalen Hurts in this postseason. Like I feel like that's something that we are acknowledging, but I don't think is getting the key focus here. So maybe before you make your prediction fully here, Dame, if it helps you a little bit more, let's talk out the whole Hurts versus Mahomes deal. Like, what is it that these quarterbacks need to do in particular to solidify like the case of victory for their teams?
For Jalen Hurts, it's pretty obvious. Like, it would have to be him making things happen with his legs. It felt like, even watching the Cincinnati game, it felt like although the Chiefs defense was getting a lot of pressure on Burrow, it seemed like he had a lot of room to run. He's just not that kind of quarterback. He tried to stay in the pocket a lot longer than he needed to. I think if he was a lot more elusive, it might have he might have done more damage to that defense. So I think Jalen Hurts' big thing is going to be him running the ball. I don't know if he's going to be able to, or if the Chiefs have a different kind of game plan for him that they did Burrow. Maybe they knew that Burrow wasn't really going to run it, but now they're going to change up their game plan knowing that Hurts can. So I think a big thing is going to be that, because if he is able to run the ball and get outside the pocket and do damage that way, that'll kind of be able to slow down their pass rush, because they won't be able to go straight at him and penetrate that pocket. They'll have to kind of sit back for half a second or hesitate for half a second, not knowing if he's going to run or he's going to pass the ball. And that'll give Hurts enough time, and those two great wide receivers and great tight end enough time to get open and make plays. As for Mahomes, it's just as long as he is Mahomes, as long as he has the time, I think he's going to be all right, because although big thing is like, oh yeah, like he doesn't have that number one receiver, but he just gets done with whoever is on the outside at wide receiver. So I think if his offensive line is able to protect him and give him time, and as long as that ankle is healthy enough, he's had 2 weeks now, I think he will be a lot more healthier than he was in the Cincinnati game. I think he'll be able to go outside his pocket, roll out, make those plays that we know Patrick Mahomes can make outside the pocket and off platform and stuff like that. So for Hurts, I think it's all about his legs, and for Mahomes, I think it's just about him getting enough time and that ankle being healthy enough to make the plays that we know Patrick Mahomes can make down the field.
Well, that being said, I gave Chris's analysis. I gave his prediction. Now it's time for our predictions here, Dame. Have you? This is so hard, man. Have you gotten any clarity with who you're going, or you're still going through the machinations here?
Nah, I'm gonna go. It's tough because I'm gonna go with the Chiefs.
Mhm.
It's really close though. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles lose, but maybe it's a little biased because I love Patrick Mahomes so much, and just the fact I'll be rooting for it. That's maybe why I'm making that prediction. But I'm gonna go with the Chiefs. I think it's gonna be definitely a one-score game, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal. I don't know who's gonna be last with the ball. I don't know if it's gonna be Mahomes walking it off or just Jalen Hurts not be able to get it done. But I think it definitely will be a one-possession game. I think hopefully, not even just thinking about it, but hopefully it's one of those Super Bowls where we finish watching, we're like, damn, that was one of the greatest Super Bowls we've watched, because there has been a couple stinkers in past years, like the Chiefs, Bucks, the Rams, Patriots. Like, hopefully it's a really good one. I'm going with the Chiefs here. If I have to give a score prediction, I'll go 34-28 for the Chiefs.
Okay. Dame is the bravest of us all, because I'm not giving a score prediction. I'm just not. So I give you all the credit there, Dame. I have gone back and forth so many freaking times on this, Dame. Like, Dame knows this. Guys, you've seen this. Dame, in the last 2 years we've done our predictions, how many times have I picked against the Chiefs? Like twice?
Yeah, it feels like we just as a podcast, we don't really pick against the Chiefs.
We don't.
Even the year that they were down, like the last year where the first half of the season they weren't good,
yeah,
we still picked them every week to win.
And eventually, I mean, to be fair to us, they did come back and they ripped off like 6 or 7 in a row.
Yeah, I'm gonna give us credit for that. That we kept picking them, we kept having confidence, and we kind of build up their own confidence and their own ego to kind of turn it around. So props to us.
And even the last 2 seasons with the 49ers on the NFC side, like when the Niners were down last year, what they start like 3-5? This podcast said the 49ers were still going to make the postseason, and they made the NFC title game. So like we stand with guys that we like, even though they're falling on hard times. We don't run away from it. We don't run from the grind, you could say, ladies and gentlemen. Which, I mean, Dame is here, so obviously he never runs from the grind like the other Dame, but to each his own. All right. My prediction. The Super Bowl. Is this Super Bowl 52 or 53 here, Dame? I forget.
To be honest, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
All right. The Super Bowl champion, the team that'll hoist up the Lombardi Trophy, at the end of this 2022 regular season to the 2023 postseason, ladies and gentlemen, for the second time in the last several years, the champion of the NFL will be the Philadelphia Eagles. I think, and this hurts because I love Patrick Mahomes, and I've had bad luck with Patrick Mahomes because I picked against them in the 49ers Super Bowl, and they won. And I picked Mahomes in the Tampa Super Bowl, and they won. So I'm 0 for 2 in terms of predicting right. And maybe I'm going to go 0 for 3. But the Philadelphia Eagles defense has been gangbusters this season. I think the secondary is way too talented. I think the linebacking core is the only thing I'm semi-worried about, but I think they have enough on 2 of the 3 levels to where they can match the Kansas City Chiefs game. And I think the rushing attack is just so good and so lethal. And I think they'll be able to attack that. The only concern it would be, and I want an out here if Jalen Hurts gets hurt in the Super Bowl, but in all seriousness, I think fully healthy, I think the Philadelphia Eagles defense is going to cause enough problems. I know the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line is great, but I think this Eagles defense is way better than any defense that they faced so far. It's better than Jacksonville. It's better than Cincinnati. It's more proven than both those teams. It's better than both those teams, excuse me. They have the weapons there that I think can compete with Kansas City. And I am assuming here that this game is not going to come down to the final throw. That is just going to be one of those things where the Eagles are up by enough where the Chiefs score late and the Eagles just run out the clock to win the game. I'm with you, Dame. I hope this is screw it. I'll give a score prediction too. I will say 31 to. I'll go 31 to 30. I'll go 31 to 30. The Philadelphia Eagles win this game, and they win the Super Bowl here over the Kansas City Chiefs. I have a lot of trepidation with this. I'm not, 100% confident in this. I wouldn't be confident in the Chiefs pick either. I think this could go either way, and I'm with Dane here. I hope that we get the best possible Super Bowl matchup here, and that this doesn't become a stink. Because I think overall the postseason, we've kind of had a lot of stinkers here. We had a lot of games that we hope would be great, and that haven't been. I think that the two of us, I also, Chris, let's speak for the whole podcast. That the podcast as a whole, that fans as a whole, are hoping for a dynamite Super Bowl, to say the very least. So I have differentiating from my compatriots. I have the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl this season to finish things off. That was not easy for me. I love Patrick Mahomes, but it's just so difficult. But obviously this is not the last time that I think Mahomes and them are going to make it here, to say the very least of that. So yeah, that is my prediction. God, it's so difficult. Any final thoughts here, Dave?
No, just a lot of money's gonna be bet on this game. I don't know if you saw, they came out with a thing that $16 billion has already been bet on the Super Bowl. That's nuts. I'm sure. I'm one of them. I'm not betting that much, but yeah, it should be a good Super Bowl. I'm very excited to eat. Honestly, I'm more excited to eat than the actual Super Bowl.
What's the Super Bowl eating plan?
Pizza, wings, pasta, chips, pulled pork,
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, literally everything you could think of.
Beautiful. I've got me and my family are definitely going to get some Wingstop for the Super Bowl.
Wingstop is really good.
Yeah, we're going to get some Wingstop and some other stuff as well, to say the very least. I haven't had soda in a little bit, and I can't wait to.
Yeah, I haven't had soda in mad long, but Sundays all the exceptions are coming out. There's I can't not do it.
Absolutely. No, I feel you, dude. Absolutely on that for sure. No, on the betting here, Dave, it's really gotten crazy. We're not going to give our own opinions on it, but I just want to say some of the things that you can bet on, guys. Of course, per usual, what color is the Gatorade going to be for the team that wins? How long is the national anthem going to last? Have you seen this, Dame? Hold on. I told some friends of mine yesterday. They didn't know about it. There are bets on what the first song Rihanna is going to sing at the halftime show.
Yeah, and it's how many total songs she's going to sing. Like, it's nuts, the stuff that, they're coming out that you can bet.
Yes, there's going to be freaking quarter bets. Somebody bet yesterday. This is going to be the last thing I say about the game. Dame, someone bet yesterday. I forget how much they put, but the odds were massive. That someone bet that the Super Bowl is going to be 0-0 by halftime.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think that's just free money for whatever sports book it is, because it's not going to be 0-0.
Yeah, if it's 0-0 like 7 minutes into the game, I'll be surprised. Let alone 30.
Yeah, I'll send that guy money if it's 0-0 too.
So at the end of the day, guys, this is hopefully going to be a big time Super Bowl. This is the third Super Bowl that we're giving predictions for in podcast history, so I'm very excited for us about that. We'll see what happens here. I think Dame is 2-0 in Super Bowls. Me and Chris are 1-1. So this is the big time one here, because Dame won this past regular season in the predictions. I won our first regular season. Dame has won the playoffs both times. This is going to be big time here. We're going to see, does Dame just continue with his NFL dominance in the Super Bowl? We'll see. I think that we got our.
I've only had one pick wrong the entire playoffs, and it was because the Jaguars decided to blow it.
Yep. Or the Chargers, you mean?
The Chargers, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we'll see what it is, ladies and gentlemen. But at the end of it, no matter how you slice it or dice it, this is the end of this NFL regular season, the NFL season as a whole. It's come and gone, and I think we're all going to hopefully enjoy what will be an exceptional final game to the season. But fret not, we have other sports we're going to talk about, and as we've always done, we will be having our conversations in the off season because if there's anything the show loves more, Dame, than talking about the playoffs. It's the off season, it's the free agency, and it's the draft. And ladies and gentlemen, trust me when I say we will have another mock draft this time around. But that just about wraps up this episode for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse that. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us on this one. This is not the easiest episode for us to record. I will, peel back the curtain a little bit. This is not an easy episode for us to record. There had to be a lot of things happen, a lot of moving parts here. But at the end of the day, we were able to do it. As of course you can tell, our fearless leader is not with us. He will hopefully be rejoining us next week. But in the meanwhile, if you want more updates on the show, please follow us at somewhat.sports on Instagram to get the latest updates. We always post it when the pod comes out. And trust me when I say there will be a poll on Super Bowl day on who do you think is going to win. There's going to be a post that you see our predictions. If you have your thoughts about our predictions, put it in the comments. Should I have gone with the boys and go with the Chiefs? Are they wrong? And they should have gone with the Eagles like myself. Please let us know at somewhat.sports on IG. And of course, for this podcast itself that you're listening to, Somewhat Spaced in Sports on Spotify, Instagram. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. To YouTube and Spotify. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel for us. Go on Spotify, give it a listen, give it 5 stars. Let us know, please. This podcast loves to hear back from the people. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know what you want more of. Trust me when I say there will be more Chris in future episodes. Maybe to Dame Chagrin, but there will be more Chris. Chris will return for next week in future episodes, and we will have our usual trio back together in an absolute banger. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us this NFL season. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and as always, we will see you guys next week.